Jason, dude, what is up with you, man? Why do you look all stressed out? We got Aaron in the green room. He's going to be ready in like 2 minutes to come on. What are you doing?
Dude, Kevin, man, I'm just stressing out because all these acronyms, I can't keep them straight in my head, man. I know what they mean, but they just, you get on camera, you start talking about this stuff and you fumble over your words. I just don't want to do that, man. I am seriously fighting acronym fatigue.
Hey, whoa, dude, just freaking relax. First off, I think all you really need is just take a chill pill, man.
Whatever, Kevin, man. I don't have a chill pill. God.
Wait, you don't think I got chill pills? Here, I'll tell you what. Take this. This is all you need, buddy. Okay? Here. No, seriously. No, take it.
Okay, Kevin. Okay. All right, let's see.
Take it. All right, you got it?
Yeah, I got it. All right. This is it, huh? Wait a minute, man. What's in this thing?
Well, you see, that's where the trick comes in, my friend. I think that's actually my dog suppository.
Dude, man.
Hey, but tell me this though. How do you feel?
Oh, shoot, man. Actually, I'm pretty chill. Shoot. Man, MDR, NDR, XDR, EDR, I know all them things. Let's go. Episode 7, Fighting Acronym Fatigue, Part 1.
Hello and welcome to the Cyber Distortion Podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 7. And we've entitled this one Fighting Acronym Fatigue. And we've got some special guests here tonight from Ironwood Cyber. So, Jason, this is the kind of episode that I get super excited about because when we first started talking about doing a podcast, this is the kind of episode I had in mind. Just getting some cool people in cyber to come on with us and just shoot the shit. This is going to be a lot of fun tonight. I can't wait to get into this stuff. So we've been wanting to get Ironwood on for a while since right before DEF CON last year when we met these guys. And, we're really happy to bring on our special guest tonight. These are the creators of the Tron badge, which you notice we are all showcasing tonight. So all you DEF CON folks out there that are badge life collectors, these are the guys. So they're going to be out there this year again. We'll get into some of their plans maybe for DEF CON 31 and what they're planning this year on their badge. But before we get into that, we're going to get down and dirty with some cyber talk. So tonight, we were lucky enough to get the CEO of Ironwood, Dr. Aaron Estes, to join us tonight. He is
good to be here. Yeah,
the
call
Chief
me Aaron, please.
Epic Officer. Okay, will do. Chief Epic Officer. So that's how you reference CEO. I love that. Yeah. He is a co-founder of the business.
I'm not an executive. That's why I put that in there.
I love it, man. It's great. So Aaron is a co-founder of Ironwood, and he's going to talk about everything they do over there. And he's also a professor at SMU, professor of cybersecurity. He's been teaching over there for 14 years. Those on Discord and some of the other channels might know him as Dr. Ale.
Dr. L.
Now would be an excellent time to show us that really cool neon sign you have over there in your office. That's pretty awesome, man.
There we go.
Dr. L.
Dr. L. That's so awesome.
Who has something that cool in their office, man? That's so awesome. All right, Aaron, welcome.
It was Ethan's idea. So the other fellow that started our company, Ethan, it was his idea first. He goes by No Decaf, and he got a No Decaf sign, so I had to get a Dr. Ale sign.
You guys have the best. You guys have the best handles over there. I love it. I love it. Well, welcome, Jason. I'm going to kick it over to you.
So, Aaron, look, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the cool technology you guys are using to detect and stop threats like ransomware. But before we get into that, I also want to point out that you and your co-founder, Ethan Puchaty, are both former Lockheed Martin Fellows. So first of all, let's talk about Lockheed Martin. So for all of you who don't know Lockheed Martin, which you should, right? Lockheed Martin is a global leader delivering full spectrum cyber capabilities, supporting the offensive and defensive efforts of our defense and intelligence community customers. Lockheed Martin's corporation is an American aerospace, arms, defense, information security, and technology corporation with worldwide interest. And to be even more specific, Lockheed Martin is building our defense aircraft and missiles for the United States military. The F-35 is one of those. But what really is a fellow at Lockheed Martin? So, Aaron, can you enlighten us on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of organizations and companies have fellows programs. A lot of times they're scientists, research scientists and things like that. So you'll see that at healthcare and different companies like that. Because Lockheed Martin is an engineering firm primarily, they employ probably 50,000 engineers, something like that, across the world. They have a program for engineering fellows, and the engineering fellows program, it's a pretty strenuous program. It's kind of a career-long aspiration. I was lucky enough to become a fellow back in 2016 when I had been at Lockheed maybe about 15 years, but it's not really common. I actually had somebody from another company look at me and say, "You're a fellow? I thought that was for old people." And sometimes that's the truth. It's for old people, but no, it's really the top. It's less than 1%. So I forgot the exact number, but it's less than 1% of the engineering population. And they guard those numbers really closely. So every year they look at how many fellows there are, and they look at the total population, and they calculate how many fellows can be inducted that year. Sometimes fellows retire, or they'll become. There's also a senior fellow. So once you've been a fellow for at least 6 years, you can apply for senior fellow, which is the point I was at when I actually left Lockheed. I was being put in for senior fellow that year. A lot of people would ask, well, why would you leave Lockheed if you were going to be a senior fellow? But this job really was my dream job. This is what I always wanted to do, was be a part of my own thing and make our own impact, and really be able to bring our own culture to the job. So so I decided to take a position away from that, but not to take anything away from being a fellow. It's an amazing job. You get to do a lot of really cool work. They look to you to be the expert. We're talking about people who have doctorate degrees or who've been published or are really recognized in the industry as a leader. You can't just be a Lockheed Martin, not cybersecurity. So it's for all kinds of fellows, but engineers. But you can't just be good at Lockheed. You also have to reach out to the community. You have to be recognized in the community and be doing things like teaching or publishing. And so it was a real honor to become a fellow. And then it was a huge honor that another fellow, Ethan Puchaty, who is, intimidatingly smart, he was, willing to join me on this journey. I thought he was going to tell me, hell no, why would I leave being a fellow? Cause I thought the same thing too. But when we had this opportunity, it was really something we couldn't pass up. So, but it was a great honor. Another thing I can kind of show, if you see that statue back there, the statue of Nike without the head, up on
Oh
my,
yeah, yeah.
that's the Lockheed Martin Fellows statue. So when you become a fellow, they give you that. They give you that statue. It's super heavy, but yeah, it's pretty
Wow.
cool. Yeah, it's also called Victory.
Very
I
Yeah,
think
cool.
it
that's
has to do with victory, and it's the statue of Nike. Yeah, but
yeah,
anyway,
that's
yeah,
really cool. That's a really cool story.
I worked
Yeah.
out there at
So
Lockheed as a contractor for about a year, so I'm pretty familiar with Lockheed. Man, they've got things locked down tight out there, man. You got to have
yeah,
special clearance to get into certain areas and everything. It's pretty cool. It's a great place to work. It really is.
yep. I
so I
enjoyed it.
think before we get started, Aaron, I thought it would be good, like before we jump right into the meat of all of this stuff, let's go a little step further and just talk about the origin story of Ironwood. For example, that name is really cool. The first time I heard that name, I was like, wow, you know what? You're like, who thought of that? Like
Yeah,
the combination of the two, iron and wood together, that's pretty cool, right? So tell us a little bit about the origin story.
yeah, absolutely. So when I left Lockheed, the reason I left was because of another fellow, actually not Ethan, but another fellow named Walter Storm had started a company in data science and data analytics, and he needed some help with some cybersecurity. And he called me, and I was doing some weekend jobs for him, just pretty easy stuff, but just trying to get them up to speed with cybersecurity. And man, I really loved working with them at their startup. We would go into the office, and they had like patio lights, like they had video game consoles everywhere. This was like a startup atmosphere, and it was a ton of fun. So I started talking. I just said, "Hey, man, I really like this environment. I'd love to could I maybe come work with you guys just on a full-time basis? This would be really cool." And they said, "Well, I'll do you one better. Why don't you talk to our investors and see if we can start up a new company?" And all of the companies under the investors umbrella are all tree names. So we have Arbor Diagnostics, Aspen Insights. There's another company called Cedar. And so we were like, well, we got to follow this tree theme because all the other companies have a tree theme. So we started researching, and we found that the name Ironwood and how it symbolizes strength, and it's known as one of the hardest woods. They use it to build lots of things with. A friend of mine has a fence company, and he uses it all the time to build industrial fences and things like that. So that's kind of where the name came from. Was when I heard it, I was like, yeah, that's it, Ironwood. That sounds awesome. And then we developed the logo. I don't know if I have. Do I have the logo? Oh, it's on here, sort of. It's on my hoodie here. But our logo is actually a tree. It's sometimes hard. People don't see it, but it's actually a tree. And it also looks like a power on and off switch, which is cool. And then it's got
that's what I thought it was. Yeah.
The pieces of it spell IW in the middle and then C around the edge. So it's Ironwood Cyber.
That's cool.
So
that's really cool.
But yeah, I mean, we set out to kind of start our own thing and started looking at some of the problems out in the industry, things that we had been frustrated with our entire careers, just things that we had dealt with and challenges. And, it's those things that everybody knows are wrong with the industry, but nobody has ever fixed them. And so that's kind of that. This was our chance to go solve hard problems and do it our way and, put our own culture and our own spin on it. And it's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, that's really cool. I like the origin story behind the name. Love the logo, and it just looks like, just from the pictures I've seen of the employees over there, that you guys just have a great time. When I was researching your name, I actually found something really cool online about that name. And I don't know if you're even aware of this, but I wanted to share it with the listeners too. I was curious about Ironwood, and turns out the Ironwood name, Ironwood is actually from a tree called the Australian Bloke. And it's an eastern South Australian tree, but it's considered the hardest wood in the world. Mm-hmm. So that got me thinking, okay, well, that's kind of cool. How does that, well, I wonder what the hardest wood in North America is. So I just kept on, so how you go down those Google rabbit holes. I started searching that, and I saw that the hardest wood in North America is called the black ironwood, and it's found in Florida. Some people refer to that as like Australian pines, but it's also called black ironwood. So not only is it the strongest wood in the world, it's also the strongest wood in North America where we live. So that is pretty freaking awesome. And so I thought that was kind of cool and kind of correlates to how, hardest wood and you guys are a cyber company. So, it kind of symbolizes how well you stand up against some of the, biggest threats and the strongest threats in the cyber industry today. So that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Awesome.
How long did it take you to pull that together?
Hey, I searched it and I thought, man, I can't not talk about this because this is kind of too cool and it correlates in my mind to being strong against cyber. So, hey, that's what brought me here. Hey, like I said, I like rabbit holes. I went down a rabbit hole here too, but hey, I'm going to bring you guys with me.
You know what, Kevin? You could have solved that problem a lot faster if you would have used my custom GPT engine.
Oh, would I?
Yeah. It would have told you all that too.
All right, we'll have to talk about that offline then. Figure out a way we can make a little bit of money on that.
Yep.
So, look, let's jump into it, guys. So, we kind of coined this title of this episode, Fighting Acronym Fatigue. And the reason for that is I cannot tell you how many times I have had conversations with people in the cybersecurity world that says, gosh, I hear this XDR, this EDR, this NDR, this MDR. I'm confused, man. What's the difference with all of those things? Why do we have all these DRs? Why can't one just do it? And that seems to be an area of confusion for a lot of people. And the real issue with that is the people who are holding the purse strings, who are making the decisions on how to implement things like this, they're not very clear on what the differentiating factors are for each one. So as Kevin and I was talking about this episode, we was like, these guys are probably the best ones to bring on to really get to the meat of this acronym fatigue and give our audiences very clear delineating lines of what the differences are between each one of these. And obviously, give an opportunity to highlight where Ironwood fits in this equation and what separates them from everyone else. So this is where we are in the acronym fatigue episode. And I'd like to kick it off just by saying, let's start with the EDR conversation. I'm going to pick the easiest one right out of the bag, right? Everybody should have known what that one was. So EDR stands for Endpoint Detection and Response. What does that really mean? So it's a big 3-letter acronym. We have 3 more sets of these things, but it is one of the most popular. It's probably the most popular of the 3-letter acronyms.
Probably.
It was pretty much the first on the market, way back in the olden days when viruses started hitting machines, regardless if it was your PC or your equipment at work. It was something that you could use to at least have a layer of protection of some type. An EDR agent software is deployed to an endpoint. And an endpoint really is anything from a PC to a server to a point in which traffic is going into it and something is happening on that machine. Right? And I use machine loosely, but that asset. And within an organization, it begins to record and record activity that takes place on that system. So it knows what's regular. So we can picture these agents like a security camera focusing on processes in an event, that happens. on that device. But what an EDR agent then does is that it uses the recorded data to detect potential threats. Something's not right here. I looked and seen this process over and over again, but now this process pattern looks different. And that's really what EDRs are designed to do. It is a very common scenario of our three-letter acronyms, very common scenario that is used worldwide and has been for a very, very, very long time.
Can I interject briefly here and just back up a little bit?
Yes.
Just for those who are old like me, when I came from Lockheed, actually, this was probably my last couple of years of Lockheed. People were talking about this EDR thing, and I've been in cyber for 15 years, 17 years at that point, and I didn't know what the heck they were talking about. I mean, we had always called it AV, right? It was antivirus, so that's the other acronym beforehand. Yes. And then it became NGAV, which is Next Gen AV, because they had to have a new name for the new versions of it. And then it all evolved into this EDR thing, when really they're using very similar techniques. They're adding to the techniques, they're evolving the technology, but it's all malware detection, right? And so, yeah, just for those who are older like me, like you'll recall, when it was just AV, and then we've kind of ended up in this day of calling everything DR, EDR, XDR, NDR, those things.
I'm glad you said that. Because that took me down memory lane as you was bringing that up. I'm like, oh yeah, of course, I remember that. That's exactly the flow too. Yeah, that was very interesting. But it's helpful too, right? Because people still may refer to it in those other terms. Right?
Yeah, laymen still don't know.
And we kind of moved beyond that.
Yeah,
most definitely. So let's move into NDR. Kevin, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, okay. NDR, network detection and response. So that's the next layer. And as the name implies, it directs and detects at the network layer. So it's monitoring network traffic flows that go through your organization. NDR vendors typically have multiple approaches on how they observe and analyze your traffic. But in general, a network sensor for an NDR system is typically required. And that can be in the form of a physical network device or a virtual appliance, or in some cases, both. And these sensors are placed in line in your network. And essentially what's happening is your traffic is flowing through this sensor as it heads towards a destination. Or in a mirrored configuration, which happens sometimes, there's a copy of your traffic that is forwarded for analysis. And that would usually be in the form of like a sandbox or some offsite location, generally in the cloud. And, they're analyzing that network traffic similar to how they're analyzing your endpoint traffic with the EDR. And what you're starting to see here is they're starting to layer this data together and use it to correlate events. And that kind of leads us into the next one, which is XDR.
Yeah,
so Jason, tell them about XDR.
I'll interject one more time. So for those old people, you'll recall.
Interject anytime you need to,
sir. You'll recall IDS and IPS, right? So intrusion detection systems and intrusion protection systems. And the NDR, that product line actually evolves from IDS and IPS as well. So it takes a lot of the same techniques. So people get these confused because there are so many, not just current acronyms like we're talking about today, but there's the acronyms from the past too that everybody is, grew up on and learned. And now you got to relearn what to call things. And there's always new buzzwords coming out. But a lot of times those buzzwords are really referring to something we've been doing for a long time. Somebody branded it, with a new name.
Yeah. How else are you going to remarket these things and resell them? That's something cool and new, right?
Yeah, it has to sound like it's new, even if it's still the old stuff. I can't tell you a classic example that I can't tell you how long we were developing cloud-based solutions before the word cloud actually came about. Yeah, and then all of a sudden cloud was out and everyone thought, oh my gosh, it's all new. What is this thing? It's a classic example of it. A lot of the technologies, the fundamentals of the technologies have been the same. There's variations of it, there's modifications, but the fundamentals have been the same, and we rebrand them and change them to other things like that. Which brings us to what XDR really is. So, we talked about EDR, we talked about NDR. So endpoint, network, two separate things. They do their work based on separate action points of activity. But the challenge we have is that how do you get the best of both worlds, right? If I'm really looking at solving the problem across my entire enterprise, I need to be able to see network traffic. I need to be able to see endpoint activity and anomalies there. And I need to kind of see how those things might even blend together, right? So this is where XDR comes in at. And there's multiple other points of data collection than just what I expressed just there in those ecosystems. But XDR comes in to blend the two EDR, NDR kind of models together in terms of the ability to go out and collect all this data. And depending on if it's on the pipe, network traffic, or if it's on the asset doing some work or an activity, and looking at it as a combined unit of data under a single pane of glass. Again, single pane of glass often being referred to as one place, one console, one portal that you're going to that's giving you all of this information that's saying, this is what I see network-wise, this is what I see endpoint-wise, this is what I believe might be an anomaly across the board that might be showing threats, attempt threats, or actual threats that got into your system, and being able to show you the trail of all of that all the way through. So XDR solves that combined issue of the first two, of EDR and NDR. Aaron, your thoughts there?
Yeah, this one I don't have a big interjection because this technology really is the combining of the two really is kind of the next step, and it was the novel approach. I will say that XDR is often so when we no longer know what to call things, you just throw an X in there, right? So Gen X or what.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
So that's how I feel like the X
iPhone
is like
X.
the variable that whatever they want to call. That's the one problem with XDR that I find is that whatever they want to call XDR, they'll call it that. Wherever they're getting the data from, it could be from log files, it could be from anywhere on the system, It could be from outside. They're just bringing it all together, aggregating it, and then putting an X on it and calling it XDR. But yeah, that's kind of where we are with detection and response today. Is taking as much data as we can, pulling that data in, and doing the detection kind of from a holistic standpoint. And so that kind of brings us into the next DR that kind of doesn't fit. It's kind of the redheaded stepchild of the DRs.
Before you go there, Aaron, I want to add one thing to that, because that was a very good point you made.
Sure.
In that whatever we add new, we just put an X to it. The problem with it is that there are many different levels of NDR that could be performed, but in many cases, all I need to do is say, hey, I'm monitoring my logs, or I'm pulling logs off of my network to determine what my network traffic is like, and I'm combining it with my endpoint protection. Hey, I'm doing XDR, right? There's no real measurement that says, what is a full XDR product, right? Does it cover all of these areas, or does it cover three, right?
Yep.
So that's the challenge you have, and it's important that people know.
Or does it cover 20?
Yeah, or does it cover more? Yeah. So it's important that people recognize the fact that when they hear XDR and they're looking at XDRs and they're going out and looking with that solution, there could be an enormous amount of variability associated with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So take us into the MDRs.
Point. Yeah. So like I said, MDR is kind of the redheaded stepchild. It's the one that doesn't fit all that well because it's not really a new detection technology. It's more of a service on top of the detection and response. So it stands for Managed Detection and Response. And really a better name for MDR would really be like MEDR or MXDR, Managed EDR, Managed XDR. It depends on what you're managing. We've had that problem we have a service that does some MDR capabilities, and we've had that problem with the naming. Is we're like, well, we're calling it MDR, but some people refer to MDR as, they're talking about managing an EDR. Some of them are talking about managing an XDR or an NDR, and there's really nuances to to what you're managing. But the overall idea is that a lot of these companies will buy these products, these XDR type products, and don't really have the expertise to know what to do with them, or how to configure them, or what to do if they get an alert. Or should they configure automated responses, or should they not, right? Because you could take things down. Like anytime you're doing automated response, you really got to know what you're doing, or you'll be the one that brings down your system, not the hacker, right? And so, with this lack of knowledge and skill set to be able to run these things, there are companies then that come along and say, okay, well, we'll not only sell you an EDR, sell you an XDR, but we'll also manage it for you and get it set up and configure it. And then we'll even, do the monitoring and things like that. And help you with response, when something bad happens. So that's where those MDR types of features come in. And there's really two kind of nuances to the MDR as well. One of them is companies that are more product focused. So they manage a specific product. So let's take, CrowdStrike, for instance. So you can be a managed CrowdStrike provider, which is it's an EDR or an XDR. So one thing I will say, I didn't even bring this up, is when you buy these products, if you are buying the lowest tier of any of these products, if you're buying the lowest tier of CrowdStrike, or the lowest tier of SentinelOne, or the lowest tier of any of these products out there, you are getting next gen AV. You're not getting EDR. I'm sorry, but that lowest version of their product is no more than an antivirus. And then when you get these added features, you go up in the tiers and you pay more money. Now you're getting the AI enabled, like machine learning enabled detection and things like that. So people often tell us, oh yeah, we've got EDR, and they tell us we've got this installed, and we go look at it, go test it or whatever. And we see that, oh yeah, you're really not running an EDR. You're running a glorified antivirus here. So something to mention, but that's kind of the kind of expertise that we bring when we do these types of services, managed services, is we tell them, hey, at this tier, you're really not getting what you think you're getting. It's not giving you the protection that you think it is. It's really just a glorified antivirus. But some of them are tool-based, so I manage a specific tool. Others will manage a service, and they may not even tell you what the tool is. So companies like CrowdStrike will let you white label their product, right? So you could be using CrowdStrike under the covers, but you're the MDR provider, and you don't really have to even tell your customer what you're using behind the covers. You just tell them that you're doing detection and response, and you're managing it for them, and they may never see that, and they may not care. I mean, there's a lot of they're just trying to do their business, whether it's healthcare, or oil and gas, or whoever. They're not so concerned with exactly what you're doing. They just want to know that they're covered and protected, and that's kind of where the MDR comes in. The vendors there really are the experts in their tools, and then there are other third party vendors that come along as partners and learn the tool so that they can provide these managed services as well. Kind of a way that we talk about this, in a way that you can kind of generally understand the MDR capability is, if a car dealership is selling you like a car, that's the product. That's the thing that's going to get you from point A to B, the product, right? But then if they also sold you a chauffeur, somebody to drive you around, that's kind of how MDR works, is that I'm not just going to sell you my product. I'll also give you support to be able to run it correctly and to make your life easier, really is the reason that MDRs came along, is to help make people's lives easier, because they don't have to have that expertise, and everybody knows how hard it is to obtain and maintain cyber expertise. So that's what that that
So
product
what you're really
solves.
saying is, what you're really saying is that if I buy the lowest tier of CrowdStrike or SentinelOne or whatever, that's the equivalent of me buying a Pinto.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but what I could do is buy the higher tier, the medium tier, maybe, and if I could get me a Ford Explorer, and then put managed services on top of that, and have my chauffeur drive me my Ford Explorer around with me in it.
At that point, you're not a Ford Explorer, though. You're an excursion.
Yeah, I'm an excursion. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'm an excursion. Yeah,
you got to bolt on all the extra features, man.
And here's another piece of that. And if we get an accident, my chauffeur is probably likely to get injured before I am.
Well, so that's
Very
actually
possible.
a really
Very
good point. I do a talk called "Driving a Volvo Doesn't Mean You Won't Get in an Accident," and it actually has to do with companies who buy cybersecurity products and don't know how to use them, and think that, well, just because I bought this product, even if I bought the highest tier, right, I'm buying the Volvo version of CrowdStrike. That doesn't mean I'm not going to get compromised, and people assume that. But I always say driving a Volvo doesn't mean you're not going to get in an accident. There's stuff that happens. There's other people on the road. There's, unexpected things. And so, yeah, that's a very good point though, is, and then when the accident does happen, who's culpable? Is it the managed detection? Is it the managed provider?
Yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of nuances in there that are actually beneficial to the customer, really.
Yeah, most definitely.
No doubt. Well, that's all good stuff. And it kind of leads us into what we're going to talk about next, which is a segue into the product called Ironwood Firethorn. So I think what we should do, guys, is take a really quick break, come back, and let's talk a little bit about Firethorn, because that one's very interesting too.
Sounds good.
Did you know that AI is already heavily used in cybersecurity to predict and stop cyber breaches in EDR, NDR, and XDR space? It's true. AI-based NDR can autonomously predict threats and hidden patterns before attacks happen. It automatically monitors the network to detect threats and anomalies for rapid, precise prediction, while you focus on operations. These technologies provide full network visibility across all endpoints. Some do so using only a fraction of network traffic. This enables fast and accurate threat detection that immediately identifies network deficiencies and vulnerabilities. And we're back. So after that fascinating discussion about all of the acronyms that are being used and blowing your mind to making it actually make sense now, I'm sure all of you can go out and really make pretty good decisions on what you want to implement within your organizations. Let's take it one step further. And we're going to talk with Aaron about what makes their product, and one product in specific, so much different than other products on the market. I think you guys will be fascinated when you hear about how this actually works. So Ironwood has a product called Firethorn. And one of the really cool things about Firethorn is that it's different than a traditional EDR, in that traditional EDRs are focused on the IOCs and signature-based intelligence detection of threats. So those indicators of compromise and just reading signature behaviors. This has already been a virus that has been detected, has a signature. We know it's in the system. We can detect it. So those two types of things, it transcends that, and it takes that a step further. And this is where I was really fascinated when I talked to Aaron about this before, and I'm sure you guys will be too. But you guys really are looking at things like the side effects that occur as a result of these things taking effect on a piece of hardware, on an asset. For example, things like temperature changes, the voltage changes, system utilization as a new process kicks off and starts mining all of your information, by the way, fan speeds, things like that. Being more intentional around observing the operation of the physical piece of device and what might be occurring out of the ordinary based on the side effects, like a virus hitting a human person and all of a sudden you get in a fever or a cough, right? Recognizing those things. So, it's so awesome to think about how those types of things are applied to traditional baseline EDR type models and how that could differentiate what you are offering today and how it can better solve these problems. So Aaron, do you mind, digging in a little deeper around how that works and why it's so effective at stopping threats like ransomware?
I can tell you one reason why it works before Aaron tells us all about it is they've got such a unique approach, Jason, that they've actually gone out and obtained 3 patents on this side channel analysis type research and technology that helps them to stop ransomware. So that's a big reason why they're the way they're doing this is so unique and so unconventional. They've applied this to drones. They've applied this to vehicles. They've applied this to medical technology and edge devices. This isn't just traditional EDR type stuff. So I'm excited to hear this part, Aaron.
Absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, when we started Ironwood, we wanted to solve some of the hard problems and some of the things that we had been up against our entire careers. And I'll tell you, as a red teamer, so as I cut my teeth on the Lockheed Martin red team, and all we did was hack stuff all day and various different types of systems, embedded, web-based systems, all kinds of stuff. And broke into lots and lots of networks and pwned a lot of Active Directories and a lot of passwords. And I will
That's fun.
I will tell you, in all of those years, this is 100% honest. In all of those years, we were never stopped by antivirus or EDR or XDR. So never once did we. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't mean we didn't encounter it and it shut us down in certain areas, but it was so easy to pivot from there and shut things down, turn things off, bypass, develop bypasses. So one of the dirty little secrets of cybersecurity is that no matter what solution you've got, a bad guy's going to find a way to bypass it. It's a cat and mouse game. You come up with a new protection, they come up with a new style of attack. You put this really awesome EDR, XDR thing in place, they figure out how to shut it off. And so we were tired of seeing that over and over. They were spending all this money on detection technology. Not that it doesn't work. It works sometimes, and it works against generic threats. But against an advanced threat, it's not going to hold up. And we proved that time and time again. But what if we had something better? What if we could develop a detection technique that wasn't as easy to bypass? And that's really what Firethorn is we monitor the system as a whole. We monitor the environment, if you will. And the way that we do that is by using sensor data, as you mentioned. So most systems in place today, whether it is a laptop, a desktop server, endpoint type device, or even an OT device, there more and more, there's a plethora of sensors out there that are providing hardware telemetry, if you will, hardware performance data, all kinds of things like temperature. I mean, you've got voltages, you've got voltage sensors, you've got fan speed sensors, you've got all kinds of telemetry, memory, not memory usage necessarily, but a hard disk usage and device usage and things like that. You'll find upwards of 100 to 120 different sensors on any given laptop system, desktop system these days. And then depending on the embedded environment, you'll find some there. So what if we could take all that data, that hardware information, And we can use that to look for these hidden side effects. Excuse me. Take and figure out these side channels, if you will. So a side channel analysis has been used for years to try to break cryptography, right? So what you do is you monitor a system and the way that it's running. You monitor things around it, things that are happening around it, and then you glean data from that environment data, and it gives you an idea of what might be occurring on that system. And that's exactly, we've kind of turned the tables on the bad guys, and we have taken that same technique and we use it to detect threats rather than to try to uncover, encrypted data, for instance. Hold on, sorry, I'm choking on my whiskey, I think.
Such a cool concept, though. I mean, so basically what you're doing is you're taking all this telemetry from the sensors and from the hardware and from everything that lives inside the laptop, from inside the case, outside of the software, outside of the operating system. And,
right.
And I think that's where the approach is so unique, right?
Exactly. Yep. Pardon me again. So the techniques that are used, we didn't really even have time to get into this, but the techniques that are used for detection within EDR and XDR systems include things like static analysis, where you're looking for strings. Sorry, guys.
No, it's okay, man.
Started choking. I can't. Yeah. Hold on. I can't. Can't
it's totally good.
So let's come back to that as you clear your throat. But as Kevin was talking, I think like the analysis I was making earlier, think about approaching the problem from the standpoint of, I'm trying to understand the physical makeup of the human body, for example, right? And now all of a sudden something is not operating correctly in the human body, and something might be causing it, like a virus. How do I more accurately detect? And in your case, you don't have to be pinpoint on exactly the type of virus that's causing it. You just have to know this is a virus and I need to stop it, right? So being able to accurately detect a virus is attacking this system in such a way that we need to stop it, because these are the effects that we're seeing, that if we stop it, these effects will reverse and we won't see the action happening.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We can detect these side effects, these things that naturally have to happen, unavoidable type side effects. The machine learning technology that we use is able to pull out things that are not intuitive to a human. So it's not just like, okay, if encryption is happening, then the system is going to get hotter. Yes, that is true. But it'll also get hotter if it's doing other things, right? Like processing video or something like that. But when you look at the holistic 120 different sensors, things don't happen the same when you're doing, let's say, video rendering as when you're doing encryption. And even when you're doing encryption, things like backup encryption or encrypting files for other reasons, or, encrypting traffic and things like that, they don't look like ransomware encryption. Ransomware encryption takes file by file. So it reads from the file system, right? Because it's got to read the file that it's about to encrypt. And it does the encryption, then it reads another file, it does the encryption, reads it, and it has a very, to the machine learning model, it has a very interesting, I'll call it a signature, even though we're not talking about the same kind of signature, but it has a very interesting profile, if you will.
Profile. Yep.
Yeah, a certain pattern that you're looking for. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
so
interesting.
I mean, here's the thing, right? You have a process that is going to go to a location, list all the directories and files in that location, start traversing down each directory and every file, and start trying to encrypt it. Now, that by itself is going to create a large memory footprint, because now I'm listing everything that's in your directory, storing in a memory, pulling off each one out of memory to process, encrypt it, and do some work. And the back end workload of that is compounding and is going to create a lot of heat on somebody's environment.
Yeah, exactly. So, and the reason that this is so powerful as a detection technique is because it is so difficult to figure out exactly how it works and to be able to develop a bypass that will not have those same unavoidable consequences, right? So you can do things like, well, let's try to slow down the encryption, or let's try to put, pauses in there and things like that. We can detect it so quickly within 100 to 200 milliseconds that pauses and things like that don't matter anymore. You can't just, okay, I'll encrypt 5 files and then I'll wait for a little while. And that's what you can do for EDR. No joke. Timing attacks work all the time against EDR systems, padding attacks, things like that, because they're looking at specific indicators of compromise. They're looking at things that are happening within a process, or they're looking at strings in a file, or they're looking at registry values, or they're looking at files that get dropped. Well, I can change all of those things about my malware very simply. And a lot of malware developers literally click a button and it creates a whole new variant that has a whole new set of IOCs. A whole new set of signatures, and now you're bypassing. That's
how
EDR.
They bypass those signatures. Yeah,
and it takes less than 2 weeks to develop a brand new piece of malware that's going to bypass the main EDRs, and in some cases much faster than 2 weeks. 2 weeks is kind of an average that we've been aware of. But yeah, and then you can take this technique, like you said, and you can apply it to embedded systems. Anything that you can get sensor data. You can even do it in the cloud, because if you think about it, cloud doesn't have hardware sensors, but you still have sensors in the cloud, lots of them. So you have all kinds of metadata and all kinds of telemetry that comes along with cloud processing to monitor everything that's happening in the cloud. And you can use that same data to do this type of detection. Excuse me. And a big part of that is training it to understand what the attacks look like too. So we're talking about ransomware, but we could also be talking about things like data theft, or we could be talking about denial of service types of attacks. Those are going to have specific profiles, if you will. They're going to show up in the machine learning model for side channel analysis as well.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you that if you're using machine learning to kind of build these models that you're doing analysis against.
Yeah, we use several awesome. Several different machine learning techniques. That's a big piece of our patent, is how to train the model to understand what a threat looks like versus just normal processing.
Yeah, that's really cool. I gotta tell you, man, that. So if you're a techie, that conversation was golden. I mean, that's like spewing nuggets all over the place of gold. You've got to be all into that and wanting to ask more questions. I want to ask more questions, but I know we're on limited time here, and I'm going to ask my questions off the clock. So, in any case, I got to tell you, I'm so fascinated with how this works. My mind's spinning about all of the other ramifications and side projects I could be talking to you about, exploring and seeing where it could go. Being in cybersecurity is an important piece. I think Kevin and I has talked about this. Our platform is to educate people, make them smarter so they can make better decisions about keeping themselves safe. There's not enough people out there doing that. And as CISSPs, that's our decree. We need to be doing that. We are part of those frontline defenses that are trying to educate people and keep people safe. And it's information like this that can help educate our public on how, what are the things that are happening in our world today that very smart people like you and Ethan are putting, great minds together to really build fascinating solutions, to think differently about how we solve these problems. And that is one of the things I'm so excited about with what you guys are doing. When we talked last year and just about how you guys approach this, I was excited, but I'm even more excited about it now as we're talking about this in more detail.
Well, it's just so unique. It's so different. It's unusual the way they're going about it, but unconventional breeds new technology. And when you're in cybersecurity, if you're not thinking outside the box about how you can attack the same problem from a different direction, then you're not forward thinking. And it seems like the technology that you guys are describing here is so outside the box and so out of the norm that I don't honestly know of anybody else out there that's doing it exactly like this. But we talked about Firethorn pretty much in depth and how it works and how it uses that side channel analysis and that's unique. But you guys offer other services there under your family of Cyber RX products. So I don't want to lose the opportunity to talk a little bit about that as well, Eric. Can you talk to that?
Sure. Yeah, I can talk about that briefly. So actually something very interesting as we approach Black Hat and DEF CON is we will be rebranding Cyber RX. So stay tuned. We're putting together a whole rebranding campaign. Same set of services, if you will, but we've really focused in on the smart automation. So Ironwood Cyber RX is really kind of an automated assessment, automated security program in a box. I hate to use that term, but that's kind of what it is. Cybersecurity as a service is another way that you can describe it. And what we found was cybersecurity has long been a capability that has been only available to the elite, right? The elite companies, the companies with the money. And if you're an oil and gas, midstream a company trying to do your business, are you really going to be able to employ and keep a cybersecurity person employed and be able to bring all of these, the protection that you need to your company? Probably not. It's very difficult these days. And the problem, the other side of that coin is those companies are being targeted just as much as everyone else these days. So you can no longer say that I'm not a target or, I'm just a small mid-sized company. That doesn't apply anymore. If you're on the internet, if your stuff is connected, you are a target. And so we have to work as an industry to bring cybersecurity to everyone, the small guys, the middle guys, everybody. And that's what Ironwood Cyber RX is really about, was bringing this automated. The reason we concentrated on automation was to be able to take the expertise that my guys and myself have all been doing this for decades. And we wanted to take our expertise and really put together a system that was, again, some of these words sound are going to sound a little bit like cheesy, but a turnkey type of solution. And you'll get a lot of naysayers in the industry. I know, I'm one of them. I've been in the industry a long time, and I see products all the time that I'm like, these are garbage. But we've, as a pen tester for about 15 years and doing assessment work, I have actually surprised myself with this product, and my guys have surprised me time and time again. We did a pen test a couple of months back where we took three or four people, 2 weeks, and we did it manually, the old school way. We were able to compromise everything. We got Active Directory. We got everything from this company. Took us about 2 weeks, and then we still had reporting and all that kind of stuff to do. Then we took Ironwood Cyber RX. We took our product and ran it against this customer, thinking, it'll do an okay job. It'll get some of the stuff. No, it found almost identical findings in about a 4-hour time frame. Which is unbelievable. Where it was literally floored me. I was like, I can't believe, we spent all this time. We've been doing this the old way. And that's what we've done with RX. And it does more than just pen testing. So we do vulnerability analysis and assessment. We do configuration, configuration type checks and things like that. We do lots of different, just kind of holistic services. Again, if I'm a small company, I need kind of a combination of these different techniques to be able to keep my company secure. And that's what we've done. So, and with the rebrand, it's going to be really awesome that we have taken, I've talked about the automation and the smart automation, but we've really made it a lot smarter. So we've made this thing, I'm calling it think like a hacker. That's what this software is able to do. The decision making. So nice. We've been calling it the decision making engine because we do have a better name, but we haven't announced it. So for now, we'll call it the decision making engine. And that thing has gotten so much smarter. It's able to take the data that we find from running a tool or running an assessment technique, analyzes that data, and then decides what the best next approach is. Not just the old automation is what we also call orchestration, where you're basically just saying, okay, run this and then take the results of that and put them into this other tool, and then run that and then take the results of that, put it into this other tool. Well, in this case, we're taking the results of something, analyzing it, and we may skip that other tool altogether because we don't need to do that. Or we may figure out, wait, there's a much easier path to domain admin if we go this way. And it learns, so the system is able to learn what's the fastest path. It's really uncanny. You can kind of think in the vein of ChatGPT and the type of learning that you're seeing from, I forgot Google's project, but where it's learning how to play games on its own. It's learning how to use a computer on its own. That's the type of learning that we're throwing at this thing. And it's been really, really impressive. So stay tuned for some really cool updates to RX.
That's really cool. Yeah, that's really cool.
That's taken cyber protection and AI married in a technology to a whole new level. I mean, people say, we're using machine learning or we're using AI. This is kind of building a run book on all of the intelligence that you're feeding this system, and it's able to define what to do based on those circumstances. And that's just a really interesting concept and an interesting way to do it. I love it.
Yeah, and it really, I mean, there's a natural path, right? Cybersecurity, I think when people are looking at it, see this daunting area of a lot of different things, but you could really put it under an umbrella of several different tasks that have to happen. They are required. You need to do it. And Kevin and I are part of a industry think tank where we've been talking about some of these things like doing risk assessments, for example, right? How do you do an accurate risk assessment of all of the assets on your platform or in your environment, in your enterprise, and be able to then marry that up with things like your cyber insurance, or marry that up with your a SOC audit, or whatever you need to marry it up with. Really, that's another ingredient for you all. I think that you don't need to go into, but being able to do a surface level risk analysis of a particular environment would marry very well into the things that you guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. It crosses all kinds of industries. The insurance play is a really big one, not just on the front end of insurance, of determining what the risk is and how to write policies better, but also on the back end when somebody gets compromised, doing the assessment on the back end and the investigation for why did they get compromised? Were they doing the right things or not? And we can go in with a tool like this and assess them in a matter of hours and come back to the insurance company and say, hey, these guys weren't doing anything that they told you they were doing, right? Because we just found all of these different findings. And so then the insurance, because they're having a problem right now, they're paying out policies every 2 days in ransomware. That's what I've talked to several insurance companies. They're paying out ransomware every 2 days. And they can't afford to keep doing it that way. So with tools like this, we can do a better job of risk assessment and, really help out in an industry like that. So it's exciting, the different applications of what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, look, guys, we have gone deep into this conversation and it's been fascinating. I could keep going, but for the sake of our audience, we need to pivot this into another part of our segment. So let's take a quick break, and we're going to come back and we're going to dig into some of the DEF CON themes that Ironwood has really, spent a lot of time promoting themselves in, like Badge Life. So we'll be right back, and we're going to dive into that.
Awesome. Sounds good.
DEF CON is a hacker convention held annually in Las Vegas, Nevada. The first DEF CON took place in June of 1993. This year, 31 years later, the expected crowd will be somewhere in the neighborhood of 30,000 attendees. A notable part of DEF CON is the conference badge, which identifies attendees and ensures access to conference events and activities. Unofficial badges took off and are as big as the event itself nowadays. Makers and creators now work to outdo themselves year after year by coming up with creative, hackable, and expressive works of electronic art. And we're back. So we are already an hour into this episode, and this episode has so much good information in it that Kevin and I thought it would be best for us to bring you part 2, where we can focus on how Ironwood has developed their story around badge life, and maybe even give you a couple of teasers into what this year's badge might be like. So with that, we're signing off, and we want to thank you all for joining us on this fascinating episode. Join us for part 2 to find out more.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of the Cyber Distortion Podcast. We're pleased that we now offer and have many options for consuming the content of our episodes. We offer the audio-only versions on all major streaming audio platforms. We offer video and audio formats, so you can take in all of the rich content visually if you'd like to. That's over on our YouTube channel at www.youtube.com/@the-Cyber-Distortion-Podcast. Don't forget to help us grow the podcast by subscribing while you're out there. Feel free to drop comments on what topics you'd like to see us cover for future episodes. You can also visit our brand new blog site. That's out at cyberdistortionpodcast.com. Follow us on Twitter @DistortionCyber is our handle. We release discount codes, blurbs about upcoming episodes, blog links, and of course, talk about drop locations for swag while we're out at various cybersecurity conferences like Black Hat and DEF CON. Speaking of swag, we have officially opened up the long-awaited Cyber Distortion swag shop, which is accessible either on our blog site at cyberdistortion.com or online directly at cyberdistortionswag.shop. We have tons of really cool new swag to offer to help get the name out about the podcast, and we're releasing new items all the time. We're offering lots of discount codes right now at the end of most of our episodes, so listen for those and watch the Twitter page because we drop those there as well. I believe that's it for now, so until next time, cheers everybody, take care, stay diligent, and remember, you are the last line of defense.